Hey guys, Rob McClellan here. This is my college football bowls preview coming up starting Saturday. We do have the bowl games starting, 35 of them in total. Definitely going to be an interesting season. I don't think there's a lot of games that are going to be super intriguing to me. There's a lot of games that I think are kind of interesting on the spread. I'm going to talk a little bit about the spread. And that's kind of what I went off of. I'll kind of mention both things. But first things first, I just want to mention that last year with DCS, obviously, going to a 14 playoff next year. I'm definitely in favor of being an even bigger playoff, 16. Even I dreamed up kind of a crazy scheme one day, kind of in the cold here, of a 64-team playoff, and I'll probably present a little blog on that at some point here, just kind of for fun, talking about how a 64-team playoff might work and might be very interesting. But obviously, some sort of playoff is definitely necessary. Starting off, we're going to go through the 35 bowls and check them off. Won't spend more than a couple of seconds on each, though. The New Mexico Bowl starts it off. Washington State, minus 4.5 is definitely the play there. I don't think Colorado State's too talented. Washington State, toughest schedule in the nation. Second bowl game, you get the Las Vegas Bowl. You get Fresno State, plus 7 against USC. I think Fresno State at least keeps it close because I don't think USC blows anybody out. And I think Fresno State could even win this game. This offense can absolutely score on anybody. If you haven't heard of their quarterback, Carr, he's Derek Carr, I believe his first name is. He's absolutely the real deal. Can throw the ball all over the field. So I think Fresno State keeps that game close. Probably even wins it, plus 7 on Fresno State. The other couple of games on Saturday, you got the famous Idaho Potato Bowl on the blue turf. You got Buffalo and San Diego State in the Pick'em game. I think Buffalo's a pretty talented team. That just had some problems at quarterback, had some issues. San Diego State kind of has been a hot or cold team from the look of it to me. Neither team is a team I follow too much, but I took Buffalo in a pick'em game, just thinking they might have a little bit more talent. Louisiana Lafayette in the New Orleans Bowl, that's the late game on Saturday. I think they pound Tulane. They're plus 1. But they won the last 2 New Orleans Bowls, and I think they know how to win. This is Tulane's first bowl game in a long time, and I think Louisiana Lafayette can really turn it on when they want to. They look so good in a couple of games, but so bad in some others. On Monday, then, you get the Beef O'Brady's Bowl on the 23rd. Eastern Carolina and Ohio. I think Ohio is one of the worst 6-6 teams in the, or 7-5 teams, that made a bowl. I think East Carolina is okay. They're not anything spectacular, and they've had some recent bowl troubles. But I think as a minus 14, a 14-point favorite, they still get the job done. The Hawaii Bowl on Christmas Eve, 7 o'clock. You get Boise State and Oregon State. Oregon State, you obviously get the great quarterback-receiver tandem. The Blitnikoff winner out of Oregon State. Boise State, I think you get a team that's had 4 road losses to 4 good schools. Washington, Utah State, Fresno State. So I think Boise State, even though they're probably not that like they were in some of the years they were really good, and without Chris Peterson, I think they're good enough to keep with Oregon State, who's really had some trouble stopping teams. I think Boise State, this is kind of going to be a neutral environment for them, and I definitely think they've got a good shot at as a 3-point dog. The Little Caesars Bowl on Boxing Day. I watched the Pitt Notre Dame game, and that was one of the games I watched for Pitt this year, and I think Aaron Donald was an absolute monster. Obviously, he won the Nagurski and such. And as a 6-point underdog to Bowling Green out of the MAC, you're going to get a Pittsburgh team that's got some talent, got some ability to make some plays, and I think is going to keep this game relatively close. And I don't think Bowling Green, coming off their MAC win, is too thrilled to be playing a 6-6 Pitt team. So this could definitely be a trap game in Pittsburgh, in Detroit, in the Little Caesars Bowl. The other bowl game on Boxing Day is Utah State, Northern Illinois. Utah State, the good defense out of the Mountain West, and you get Northern Illinois, the undefeated MAC team who lost to Bowling Green in the final. I just thought they didn't show up, and I think they come out with a vengeance as a 1.5 favorite, and Jordan Lynch kind of runs all over everybody, and Utah State hasn't seen an offense like this all year. So I think Northern Illinois wins that game. The Military Bowl, you got Maryland and Marshall. Again, Maryland, really not a great ACC team. It's Marshall, a team that's been very hit or miss in the MAC. They did go 7-1. I kind of think this game was ripe for an upset, with Maryland being a 3-point underdog, though, with Marshall having some issues, and you get a Maryland team that is playing 20 miles from campus. You're going to have a really pro-Maryland crowd. And I think if they could score early and like they have been late, because they've had a better second half of the season. They could definitely stay in this game and as a 3-point dog. Then you go on to the 27th. You got the Texas Bowl. You got Syracuse, a team that's been very average at best in Minnesota, which had one of their better seasons. They just had a really tough Big Ten schedule. They're 4.5-point favorites, but I think they win by 10, if not more. Playing for Jared Kill, and I think Minnesota has definitely got one of those teams that is really good up front. They got the good front seven. They can stop whatever Syracuse is going to put at them. I think this game ends up like 27-10 or something along those lines. Also on the 27th, you got the Fight Hunger Bowl in San Fran. You got BYU in Washington. I think Washington now with Steve Sarkisian gone, with the interim coach, is probably not the best idea. I like playing against these teams, especially when they're the favorite. So I'll take BYU and the points as a team that, this is their goal all year. They work towards the bowl game. They're an 8-4 independent. I think they got a good shot. That leaves us to the Pinstripe Bowl in the Bronx. You got Rutgers and Notre Dame. I wanted to take Rutgers so badly take the 15.5 points, because I don't think their front seven's that bad. They looked okay. I watched the South Florida game. They looked okay, but South Florida is pitiful. So you get a Notre Dame team that doesn't really blow a lot of teams out, but they can throw the ball all over the place. Brian Kelly's got 4 weeks to prepare, and I like that. And I think they want to make up for that loss to Alabama last year in a bowl game. So Notre Dame playing in a very pro-Notre Dame environment, even though Rutgers is right there in New York, is a definitely a big area for Notre Dame. So I'll take the 15.5 points on Notre Dame, but I don't feel great about it. The Belk Bowl, you got Cincy and UNC. Can't believe UNC is the favorite for this game. Cincy, I'll take the 3 points with Cincy. I think North Carolina is really not that talented of a team. They stuck around with Duke just because I think Duke made a lot of mistakes that day. And Cincy's a team that really competed. They competed with Louisville right to the last into overtime. So I'll take Cincy in the points. The Russell Athletic Bowl on the 28th. You get Miami and the aforementioned Louisville. So Louisville is a team that a lot of talent. You get Teddy Bridgewater probably playing his last collegiate game. You got Miami as a team that really has nothing to play for. This is a team that was supposed to be really good. They had got to undefeated. They got into Florida State and they got absolutely manhandled. They've kind of been on a negative slide since there, and I think Louisville just keeps up the roll and take the 3.5 points. The Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl, you get Michigan, Kansas State. I took Michigan and the 3.5 points. I can't believe Michigan was an underdog. They played so well against Ohio State, and I think this team's really coming together slowly under Brady Hoke. You get a Kansas State team that lost to North Dakota State. Wasn't really that competitive against any of the good Big 12 schools. They beat Iowa State. I think they beat Texas Tech late, and Texas Tech was flailing miserably. So I'll take Michigan to win that football game, I think. Because I think they are a team on the improve, on the rise, and a team that next year is going to be even better. The Air Force Armed Forces Bowl, you get Middle Tennessee State and Navy. I think Navy's offense is so tough to defend, just because it is that option offense. As we played, even just running it in scout as an offensive lineman, it was incredibly effective. It's so hard to stop because you got to be so precise. I think if you haven't seen it a lot, like some of the teams that play Navy every year do, I think that Middle Tennessee State doesn't have the horses to compete up front on the defensive side. So I think Navy take the 6 points and just go with Navy there. Georgia Tech I took is again the same reasoning as Navy actually in the Music City Bowl. I think that Ole Miss hasn't really seen an offense like Georgia Tech in a long time. I think Georgia Tech is another team that, they were so close to in the Georgia game. And I think that Ole Miss is a team that's really struggled in the SEC, even though they are a good SEC team. They aren't a good SEC team as good as the SEC is. You get the Alamo Bowl on the 30th. You get Oregon, Texas. Oregon obviously coming off a close win over Oregon State, a bad game against Arizona. They're going to be looking for blood. But you're going to get Texas, a team that is their last game for Mac Brown. It's either going to be a really close one and a really good one for Texas, or an absolute Oregon massacre. So I think that Oregon's going to be coming out and prepared. They played really well against Kansas State last year. I was at that game. That was an awesome football game to be at. So I'm going to take Oregon minus 14. But otherwise, it's going to be a very close one. It's not going to be a 10-point game. It's either going to be 42-10 or like 38-35. But I don't know if Texas can score with Oregon. The Holiday Bowl, I like Arizona State just to pound Texas Tech. Texas Tech hasn't done anything in 2 months. The Arizona-Boston College game in the B100 Bowl on New Year's Eve, I think you got two great running backs in Kadeem Carey and the kid from Boston College. I can't remember his name right now. But Boston College and the 7.5 points in a game that's going to be just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. In a game that's going to stay close, I think. So the Sun Bowl then is the other game, or the other couple of games on New Year's Eve. I took UCLA to beat Virginia Tech. I think they're just a better team. I took Rice to upset Mississippi State. Rice, 7-point favorite, or 7-point underdog, coming out of Conference USA against a Mississippi State team that's kind of struggled. They barely beat Ole Miss. They've had trouble with Arkansas. So I think Rice is a team that can hang around and be right there. I took Johnny Football in the 12.5 points in the Chick-fil-A just to pound Duke. Duke obviously got exploited by Florida State. I think Texas A&M is probably going to be just as dynamic. It's just about whether they can stop Duke. The Gator Bowl, Georgia, Nebraska hasn't shown up in a bowl game in years. Bo Pelini really hasn't got them playing that well. And I think Georgia's got some stuff to play for. They're a 9-point favorite, and I think they win by 15 or 16 at the least, just because I think Georgia's just a way better team. UNLV is a 6.5-point underdog against North Texas in the Dallas Bowl. I think UNLV is a team that had some ups and downs. They had a couple of tough losses, but I don't think North Texas is all that special. And I think that UNLV can keep this game close at 6.5 points. The Outback Bowl, you get Iowa and LSU. I think LSU without Zach Mettenberger is a big risk. You're getting Iowa, who's been great in bowls. They're 4-1 over the last 5 years. They're 7.5-point underdogs. Take the points. Take Iowa. They played so well against Nebraska. This is a team that is built for bowl games. They run the ball. They do all sorts of cool things. They don't give up big plays on defense. I like this Iowa team. The Capital One Bowl is a pick'em game. I took Wisconsin just because I think South Carolina's got some issues. Jadeveon Clowney's being a bit of a distraction. I think Wisconsin just pounds the ball. The Stanford-Michigan State game in the Rose Bowl. I took Stanford in the 4.5 points just because I think that they're going to be a better offensive team than Michigan State, and that the defenses are both so stout that you're going to get a game that ends up 21-10 or 21-14 or something like that, where Stanford's just going to score one more touchdown, just because I also think that their special teams are going to be a little bit stronger. I took Baylor in the 17 points in the Fiesta Bowl. As much as I thought UCF could cover, I just didn't see them being able to stop Baylor at all, and that was kind of an issue with me. And the only team really that stopped Baylor all year was Oklahoma State and Texas for a half. So I think Baylor is going to be all over them. That's kind of the same thing that happened to me in the Sugar Bowl. I wanted to say Oklahoma at 15.5 points. You can be within 15.5 points of Alabama, but I ended up writing down Alabama minus 15.5 if I have to. And Alabama, they're such a great team, but it's hard to predict how they're going to come out after that horrible Auburn loss, coming off 5 weeks preparation. This is A.J. McCarron's last game. So maybe they come out and dominate. I don't think Oklahoma's all that talented. They played absolutely their peak to beat Oklahoma State. And I don't think Oklahoma State stays with Alabama for too long, except on offense. So I think Alabama, if they're playing their best, win this game by 3 touchdowns. But it's still Oklahoma. It's still the Sugar Bowl, and that kind of scares me. The Cotton Bowl, I took Oklahoma State plus a point after I just ran them down. I don't think Missouri is going to come back too well after losing that SEC game. I think Oklahoma State is going to present a lot of problems with that spread offense, that big throw the ball, that whole. And I think Missouri's defense kind of got exploited a little bit, as you can spread them out and get some inside stuff, and then when they come back in, you're going to have that outside stuff. Michael Sam was a non-factor in the SEC title game, and that was an issue as well. And I think Oklahoma State's looking for revenge after losing a BCS game because of the Bedlam game with Oklahoma. The Orange Bowl, I took Ohio State and the 3 points. I think Clemson's played a bunch of fake schedules. They lost to South Carolina and they lost to Florida State. Haven't really played anybody, and I think Ohio State's got a really dynamic offense. Michigan State's got such a nice defense that Ohio State making that comeback was even impressive. I think the loss will get them a little bit focused. I think Urban Meyer's going to be out for blood. And remember, all these starters probably come back next year. So how good is Ohio State going to be next year? I took Vandy minus 3 against Houston. I think Houston's an okay team. But I think Vanderbilt is an underrated SEC team. They had a bad loss to start the year against Ole Miss. But other than that, they've been a pretty nice football team in a very tough conference. I think Vanderbilt minus 3 in Alabama is probably going to be a tough team to beat. That leaves just the GoDaddy.com and Ball State as a 9-point favorite. It's probably a pretty safe play. I don't think Arkansas State out of the Sun Belt is going to give them much threat. And that leaves the BCS National Championship game. You got an 8.5-point favorite Florida State team. Jameis Winston obviously going to be a very tough thing to defend for Auburn. You've got that defense that really shut down Duke, but they haven't really seen a team that's this dynamic, that runs the ball for so many yards a game, and then can throw the ball on occasion. So I took Auburn in the 8.5 points. I think that Marshall and can get it going. I think he's going to have a lot of the outside stuff because I think they're really going to collapse the middle. I think Florida State's corners are good, but they kind of showed they were a little weak. They got into some zone coverage, and they got some things against the Duke game that I think Auburn will pick up on. As much as I don't like Gus Malzahn, I think Auburn keeps this game close. We're due for a really good national championship. The last couple have been kind of blowouts, with Alabama kind of dominating some games, going back to a game we need kind of like the last time Auburn was there with Newton and Oregon. So I think Auburn's going to keep this close and take the 8.5 points. They were 10.5 earlier this week, I believe. So I like Auburn. That's to end off my picks. So there's the 35 bowl games. I tried to do that as quickly as I possibly could. Looking for a couple of little upsets, looking for some teams to really win easy. The points in a couple of games bothered me. Obviously, the Notre Dame game, the Baylor game, the Alabama game, just because it's so many points, and some of the teams really are kind of under the radar. Central Florida is the team that really bothers me playing Baylor, but if you're playing a confidence poll, I put them as the second one, I think. So other than that, good luck. Have a good bowling season. I'll be back here later in the week, probably Friday, to talk a little bit about the racing this weekend. Other than that, good luck and good racing.